Hello everyone! After this video, the author of the channel told me something important. It turned out that my story touched a certain percentage of people. And then I realized I didn't say everything. That's why today I want to spread more.
The words you heard at the beginning belong to a person with a very long life path. Later in the video you will not hear her voice and you will not see her in the frame. This was done deliberately, because in such stories the main thing is not the person herself, but the lived experience, mistakes and conclusions that she came to over decades. My task is not to focus on the face or intonation, but to accurately and honestly convey the meaning of this story in her own words. Moreover, for people of a respectable age, long filming is not a conversation, but a burden. Therefore, you will hear my voice later, but everything that will be said belongs to this person. In his 40s and even in his 50s, he did not feel that anything was going wrong. On the contrary, it seemed to him that everything was going right. He worked, fulfilled his duties, did not take risks and did not take sudden steps. He did not have the feeling that life was passing him by. He believed that he would still have time to do everything important a little later. He often postponed not big dreams, but simple decisions. To say what he really thinks. To refuse what he does not like. To make a choice that is not convenient, but honest for himself. All this seemed like trifles that do not matter today. He was sure that he had time, and that the right life does not require haste. His life was not complicated or dramatic. This is what calmed him down. There were no loud failures, big mistakes or moments after which you have to start from scratch. Day after day he lived calmly and predictably. And in this calm he did not notice how the feeling that he was living for himself gradually disappeared. He was used to thinking that real life would begin later. When it became easier. When more opportunities appeared. When the circumstances that interfered with it disappeared. But over the years, the circumstances did not disappear, they simply changed. And the desire to live differently was postponed each time for later. Looking back, he understands, the most dangerous thing was not the mistake, but the lack of feeling that there was one at all. He did not ruin his life with one wrong decision. He simply lived too long with the thought that the main thing was still ahead. And it was at this moment that life began to pass him by, quietly and imperceptibly. At some point, he began to live not as he wanted, but as he thought was right. It was not a sudden decision. Rather, it was a gradual habit. He looked around and saw that many people lived like that. They worked, endured, did not complain, did not stand out. And it seemed to him that this was adult life. He rarely put himself first. It was easier for him to adapt than to argue. It was easier to agree than to explain. It was easier to help than to refuse. All this looked normal and even worthy. He believed that such behavior would definitely be returned with respect and warmth. Over the years, this became his role. They got used to him as a person who was always there and never caused problems. They stopped noticing his reliability. His participation was taken for granted. He did not notice the moment when he ceased to be important, not because he was bad, but because he was too convenient. For a long time he didn't see anything dangerous in this. It seemed to him that this was how it should be. That the real value was in stability. That if you live as you should, life would definitely respond in kind. But gradually a feeling of emptiness appeared, which was difficult to explain in words. He didn't feel unhappy. But he didn't feel happy either. His life was filled with work, but it had no sense of meaning. He fulfilled his duties, but he didn't feel close. And the more he tried to be right, the less alive he remained. Now he understands, living as you should doesn't destroy you right away. It simply gradually erases a person from the inside. When you constantly choose convenience instead of honesty with yourself, one day you become part of other people's expectations. And at some point you realize that you are living the right life, in which there is almost no room left for yourself. For a long time he lived with the feeling that he had support. People nearby. Connections that seemed strong. It seemed to him that once they had appeared, they would never go away. He believed that intimacy did not require constant attention. That it simply existed, as something stable and reliable. He did not notice how everything changed in small ways. Conversations became shorter. Meetings became rarer. Interest became weaker. But it did not seem alarming. He explained this by fatigue, busyness, life. It seemed to him that real relationships could withstand such periods without loss. He rarely talked about his feelings. Not because he did not want to, but because he considered it unnecessary. He was sure that his role was clear even without words. That his presence was enough. That silence did not destroy intimacy, but on the contrary, preserved it. But over time, he began to feel that a distance was emerging between him and people. Not sharp, not painful, quiet. It did not cause conflicts, but made communication superficial. People were close, but they stopped being close. And he could not understand when exactly this happened. Only over the years did he realize, closeness does not disappear suddenly. It is erased when it ceases to be supported. When important things are not talked about. When presence is replaced by habit. He realized that he himself allowed this to happen, thinking that time would solve everything. Now he sees that closeness is not something that remains automatically. It is something that either lives or disappears. And if you take it for granted for a long time, one day people with whom you no longer truly connect will remain nearby. Not because someone is to blame, but because the connection quietly dissolved into silence. He is already over 100 years old, and right now, for the first time, he feels that he is not living by inertia. He has stopped explaining his every choice. He has stopped agreeing to things that don't suit him. He has stopped pretending that he doesn't care. For the first time in many decades, he has allowed himself to be honest with himself. From the outside, this may look strange. At this age, people usually sum up, rather than start something new. But for him, this is not a beginning, but a belated return. A return to himself, which he has not noticed for a long time. He no longer waits for approval. He is not afraid to look awkward. He does not postpone his desires for later. And at the same time, right now, he acutely feels the price of this delay. Time has ceased to be abstract. Every day is felt separately. Every little thing has weight. He understands that he will no longer have time to do many things, even if he really wants to. Not because of prohibitions, but because of boundaries that can no longer be moved. This does not look like joy. More like quiet acceptance. He sees that he lived the way he would have liked to live before, but did so at a time when there were significantly fewer opportunities. Realization comes without panic, but with bitterness. Because he knows for sure, he could have afforded it much earlier. The most difficult thing in this experience is not age or limitations. The most difficult thing is understanding that freedom did not appear suddenly. It was always there. He simply believed that it was not time yet. That first you need to fulfill all your duties, and only then allow yourself to live truly. Now he lives as he considers right for himself. But every time he feels this inner freedom, another thought appears nearby. About how many years he lived without allowing himself this. And that time is the only thing that does not give a second chance. When he thinks about his life, he has no desire to justify or explain anything. He does not look for the guilty and does not try to look like a victim. The only thing that is important to him is to look honestly at how everything turned out. Without embellishment and without self-deception. He does not speak of regret as pain. It is more like a quiet thought that appears again and again. He regrets not specific events or individual decisions. His thoughts return to the years in which he could have lived differently, but chose to wait. Not because he did not know how, but because he believed that it was not yet time. Over the years, he has understood one simple thing: life does not warn when exactly later will come. It does not give signs and does not remind that time is getting shorter. It simply moves forward. And if you live all the time with the thought that the main thing is still ahead, one day you wake up with the feeling that this ahead is already behind you. He is over 100 years old. And only now has he allowed himself to live as he thought was right for himself. He no longer postpones desires, does not remain silent where it is important to say, does not automatically agree. He feels an inner freedom that he has not had for most of his life. But with it comes an understanding of the price. The price of this freedom is the time that is almost gone. He experiences every day and every hour differently than before. Not with fear, but with clarity. Because now he knows for sure that there is nothing more important than time. Everything else can be returned or changed. Time, no. This story is not about old age and not about the fear of death. It is about a life that can be postponed for a very long time and not even notice how it passes. And about the fact that awareness always comes. The only question is when. And how much time will be left after that. If this story made you stop and think, then it was not told in vain. Here I share real-life stories and experiences of people who have lived long lives and realized things that many realize too late. Subscribe to not miss the next stories.